Welcome back in short order to the 1600. I actually made some headway with the scotch tape or masking tape on the back and front windows. But some bigger news is in this box right here. That is the harness that I've been bellyaching about not having and sort of giving up hope on the last several months. So I actually have this. I was able to finally get in touch with my buddy who had it, and it's not completely terminated, but it's close enough where I should be able to do the rest, and it also has all my pins and things, which is super duper nice, because I mean, as you guys know, I've spent a good deal of money on just pins and plugs for this thing. But it's super legit. So what we've got here is one of those brand new DIY Auto-Tune 8-foot Mega Squirt harnesses. And spreading it out just a little bit. And we've got Raychem that is not quite heat shrunk yet. What Raychem is, it's a really, really high grade heat shrink tubing. All of the outputs are labeled because it is that $80 fancy harness. It's got some split wrap, which is decent. And we've also got the EDIS-4 controller plug up here. So that's all set and ready to go. I do still have to look at exactly what's going where. I don't know if we still have the printouts, or if I can even find that stuff, or if I'm just gonna have to, I think I'm just gonna have to go crazy with, oh man, with my multimeter. So I've got a basic Mega Squirt thing that came with the harness, as well as the other side of my X20, that beautiful connector. The reason why that's not crimped in yet is because it all has to go through the firewall. So this is underneath the passenger seat, and then all this up here, this is the EDIS coil trigger up here, and I believe it's got, I don't know if those are, okay, they are still labeled, so PWM idle. That's a little strange. So I guess we have the idle motor coming up through there as well. And I think these two red wires are power for the coil. So not exactly sure. I have to do a lot of digging because none of the additional stuff is labeled, and a lot of the heat shrinking hasn't been done yet. So I'm probably gonna have to buy a bunch more heat shrink, unfortunately, at some point. But I'm not too worried about it. A lot of this will just get cut off and put into the X20 connector, so it shouldn't be too bad. Looks like we do have one or two really long runs of Raychem. Not sure what these are. What's the yellow wire? Anyway, I don't need to do all this on film, but not labeled, yikes. But anyway, I have the harness, so that's really cool. And I finally broke down and I bought some, I think these are actually plug wires for the Ford Tempo or whatever, the 93 Ford, the thing that the EDIS actually came from when I ordered it. So I'm going to unbox those and just see if I can get them to play nice with the spark plugs that are in this M10, which are pretty standard. I guess you can't even really see them very well, but there they are down there. I'm going to plug it in, just see what we can do. Pretty cool. Oops. X20 connector. The plug wires fit. I really can't find any information online as to what plug goes where on this EDIS-4 coil tower, except I did find one guy with a 2002 running EDIS and Mega Squirt that had a photo of his engine bay, and I was sort of able to trace. So this might be right or not. I don't really know. I'll probably have to figure that out before I eventually get to the point of trying to start it. But yeah, the X20, I think I'm going to either mount here or here. Probably over here. There's a little bit more room. Obviously, we've got a huge hole in the firewall here for our plugs, and then I'm also going to need to mount that fuse block somewhere up here or inside the car. I guess it doesn't really matter which place, but I'll have to figure that out. I do still have to get the E30 coolant outlet thingy up here and get that painted or powder coated so it matches the beautiful valve cover, heat shield, and intake manifold. But baby steps. I think at this point I'm going to at least lay the harness in the car, maybe? Or maybe it would behoove me to grab my laptop and start actually tracing which wires go where. Because that's probably a lot easier to do right here than it is to do in the car. And as I think about it, yeah, that is definitely the way to go. So I guess I'll get the laptop first, and we'll see what we can figure out here. Well, I've got it all sorted out. There actually wasn't too much that didn't make sense. Random yellow wire is output from our fuse block to the fuel pump. Purple wire is the ground trigger in to that bad boy, so we'll have to wire that in. A bunch of ignition switched output. There's an ignition switched input, but I need to find a nice chunky wire to do the actual main battery plus in to that busman block. Probably something good for 40 amps or so, because it'll be driving the whole car. Idle control, I actually pulled 2 more wires in because the idle controller on the engine is a stepper motor, not a PWM like that was wired for, so I may have to do some editing on the engine harness to make that work. This is all ground to engine and chassis, injectors, and then we've got signal ground, TPS, CLT, IAT, so all the kind of sensitive signal wires, and then we've got VR with the shield right there. So pretty straightforward. I'm ready to shove this in the car now carefully, just so it's all in the right spot, but everything appears to be there. I'm definitely not going to heat shrink anything until it's ready, but it's looking really, really nice. So this harness is gorgeous. So there you can see it. I might actually make a plate for the firewall and slide all this through before I start terminating anything in the engine bay, just because it is all set up for that right now. It would be nice to have it grommeted, but the ECU and the EDIS will sit underneath the seat on some sort of plate. This mythical wire will go behind the dash to our ignition up there, because we need switched ignition power. The ray cam with the yellow, that'll go under the carpet probably to the back to the new fuel pump, which is not in there yet. The pink wire there, I'm not going to do anything with just yet. I'll have to see if I have space under the hood for it. But the AEM UEGO wideband, which I'm going to have to install in this car at some point, will need to output a 5-volt signal to the ECU, and that's what that reference wire is. So I have to make sure I've got a circuit in the fuse box. I'm guessing that will end up going back into the engine bay, and it'll just all happen outside of the firewall. Everything from power to ignition switch. I'll probably need a couple of circuits of ignition switch power, running even a few back into the car just for new 12-volt accessories like a Bluetooth speaker or something like that. And try to keep the interior as minimalist as possible. I do have a new carpet set to put in this car, which will obviously involve taking out the center console and everything like that. This is going to be a pretty involved project. I do want to get the car running, so I have to kind of decide what steps to do first, because I do have to terminate all the connections into that new X20 connector into the engine bay bulkhead before I can even try to start this car. And of course things like the fuel pump. But yeah, I mean the bundle right now is actually pretty minimal in size. It's just that right there. So I'll probably take some measurements of that opening and get a slug of aluminum a little bit bigger than that. Cut a hole in it, find a nice grommet that fits it well but snug, and make that all nice and pretty. I'm just over the moon that I'm able to use this beautiful harness. I was really, really worried that I wasn't going to be able to, so pretty happy about that. I guess that is a 3-wire valve. Maybe that is PWM. I will have to look. If it is, I can get rid of those stepper wires, because they're probably not even wired into the X20 as it sits right now. And of course, I've got my donor car bracket. I'll have to find a good way to fasten that to the firewall, just so it looks all nice and pretty. But yeah, there's a lot to do, obviously, but we are way, way closer than we have been the entire time I've owned the car. So pretty excited about that. It's not a very complicated electrical system, so I'm optimistic that I'll be able to make this work. I'm excited to hear it fire up for the first time, and it'll be probably almost 2 years at that point since it's had the carburetor on it. Yeah, so pretty stoked. So one thing I wasn't entirely confident about was the valve stems for the Murcielago. I was able to find those Fox Shock ones, but they're a little bit shorter, and I don't think they're going to seal between the two pieces of wheel. So I bought these Schwalbe tubes with extended Schraders, and it's the same thread all the way through. So what I'm going to do is going to cut off the bottom right here, then I'm going to compare it to what we've got at the bottom of the Lamborghini stem, and just sort of see where we're at. I think with some RTV on the bottom of here to substitute the O-ring, like that, we should be in better shape. I'm just a little bit worried, and I can actually sneak that O-ring on there too, for the upper seal. I'm just a little bit worried that that original one would have been too short, and we've got pretty much the perfect depth right here on this Schwalbe. So I'm going to give that a go. I think it's just a better chance of success. And I really don't want to have to buy these, but I certainly can wind these out at some point if I have to buy actual Lamborghini parts. It's tough. Oops. Messed up the video. So it's tough to thread that in. I should probably try to find a little hex nut for that thing that's the right thread pitch, and like Loctite it in place or something. These are nice because they have that in place already. But again, I just don't think the back is quite deep enough. Even with a little bit of sealer, I just don't think that that's going to get us quite far enough to seal that up. It might still be worth a try, but I wouldn't be terribly optimistic. Well, I unearthed a whole lot of stuff from this trunk. Here is the fuel tank, which actually looks in epic condition, which is really great news. What we've got here, factory level sender and fuel output, to the carburetor. So I'm probably going to end up using this line as a return because it feels like it's plastic, which isn't so great. I would actually like to replace that all if I can, and I can, so I may end up going with AN, but there's the factory level sender, which again looks like it's in pretty great shape. Just pin for ground and then signal reference for the cluster. I'm going to back that out, and I'm actually going to grab my E21 fuel pump and make sure that that fits in. Oh, the line's off. Next step is going to be removing this, and the best way to do it I'll show you in just a second here. A pair of flat blade screwdrivers, get them both in the appropriate notches, and I can't do this one-handed so I won't, but just use the torque of the screwdrivers against each other on the handles and you'll be able to twist this bad boy out. It'll only twist maybe a 1/16 of a turn, then you just pull it straight up. Oh good lord, it is a completely brimmed tank of gas, which is actually great news. It means that the tank is probably not rusty inside. And the gas honestly doesn't smell too varnished, so clear gas. Once I add the fuel pump in there, I might try to pump all of that fuel out into another car and use it, just so I don't really have to worry about it, because this car is probably still months from hitting the road. But I'm going to hop inside, grab that E21 fuel pump, and we will look at this original 67-1600 level sender up against that E21 fuel pump. So, here we go. This was originally designed to be a pretty low pressure boost pump, but for the amount of horsepower that we're running, this should do the trick just fine. It comes with a new O-ring for up at the top here, and as you can see, they are pretty much the same length. Okay, yeah, so we've got pump output, which is the big guy, looks like, and return is the little guy. So that'll work actually perfectly for our needs. I'm going to have to see if I have an E30. I think that's the same plug as an E30 electrical plug. And then I totally forgot this doesn't come with a level sender. But I have a bunch of early style E30 level senders that should work here too. The pump of choice is the 1991 E30 318i pump. It has the same twin in-out, so you don't have to add a return in somewhere else, and it has a bigger pump in it. But for the kind of power I'm running, this should do just fine for the kind of pressures I'm running with that E30 318i fuel pressure regulator. What else about this is unique? I don't think there's really anything too special about it. But yeah, I may throw the old level sender in just for evaporative reasons right now, unless I have a sender in that box. So I'm gonna check that right now. But eventually this will be our fuel pump, or at least the carrier for it. And this should do the job really, really well. So this is a nice inexpensive option to get a return in the carbureted tank.